Okay, so where's my okay, so can everyone see like this black thingy with like white words? I'm highlighting it right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Um so what you need to do is like you need to what it means to get clone is to like essentially like make a copy of um like a repository essentially onto your computer. So the first thing you should do is make sure you know where you're cloning the code, right? Like, do you want it in your downloads folder and like your doc folder, etc. So right. So for example, where I am right now is I'm just like in home, right? So I'm just like under users, and then like I guess my user is like the mininator. So that's where I keep all my code. So what you would do is you would go git clone, and then let's see. I believe. Well, if there's like a link to the GitHub repos. Or let me pull that up. So, all right. So this is the link to the GitHub repo. I'm just gonna put this in Zoom chat. Right, and so you would essentially git clone this link dot git. So and once you run this, so you just press enter. I'm not going to clone it because I already have a copy. Essentially, you will see it like saying like, oh, it's cloning all these files, putting them on your computer, etc. And then when that's over, what you can do is so you have essentially a copy of the folder, and then you can do cd blueprint demo app dash 2022. And so what cd does is essentially says like go to this directory. And so you will be now you see like you're in like the blueprint demo app 2022 directory. Another way of like checking this is if you're not really familiar with like terminal yet, you can just like make sure like wherever you are, like for your documents, you can make sure you have like blueprint demo app 2022 in there. For example, I'm in home and I see like I got like blueprint 2022, and so that tells me I have the code that I need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I figured out the issue. I didn't put .git, and so I got like a really confusing error message.
Okay. Cool. Does anyone else have any trouble cloning or getting the GitHub?
Whenever I tried to clone it, I was able to download it, but then it says I need a username and a password for GitHub, which I do not have.
Okay. Wait, now do you know if we're supposed to you need like a
you probably need to like config credentials to use like your Git account at all in terminal. I can like find a link that explains it or something.
Yeah. And for Joseph, right, so the BB demo app was like an old repository that I sort of deleted a little. So yeah, so you're not gonna be able to find that. Instead, like you said, do the CD try or CD blueprint demo app dash 2022. So this should be the name of the repository. So yeah. Okay. And another thing is, so last night I updated the repository. So if you like cloned your repository earlier than last night, what you want to do is you want to do git pull origin main. And so that'll like essentially take the newest changes from like the online version, like where I pushed like the online version of the code, and pull it to like your computer. So you'll have like the most up-to-date version of the code. So if everyone once you have, if you like cloned if you cloned the repo like I guess like earlier than today, you might as well just like run git pull origin main, which is what I'm doing right now. And yeah, it should like update your repo. Otherwise, it'll just tell you you're already up to date. I can also just put this command in the chat. Wait, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I'm just making sure. Let's see. Um. All right, and so another thing is you would probably, I'd say, be running git pull origin main a lot today, just because I'll be pushing code to GitHub. You will be taking that code off in preparation for like the next sessions. So yeah. Cool. All right. Does anyone else have GitHub troubles? Did you figure out the like the login? Whoever asked that.
No, it's still saying whenever I try to log, I actually created an account and then it's saying there's still an error.
What's the error?
It says that authentication failed.
Did you run like exactly like git clone like link.git?
Yeah, I just copy and pasted the link.
I feel like it's probably something to do with your SSH. Is anyone else having this problem? Speak now, or like forever hold your peace. Okay. Everyone else has the repo. Okay, so Hannah says, yeah, so she also had to make an SSH key.
Wait, you guys can try using HTTP. Is that not what you guys are doing?
Let's see. Okay, so then I guess if you are having trouble with that, Nat, can I put you in a breakout room with people who are having trouble with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I think that's. Is there anyone else in the room other than Lexi? Okay, alright, so let me just do this really quickly. Okay. Alright. Okay. So then everyone else, okay, so Pratiti said you're also getting an error message with the original git clone. Like, what sort of error message are you getting? Invalid active. Okay. Are you cloning the right repo? Let's see.
It's the link in the chat, right? That and then .git.
Yeah. Okay, let me just send the entire. Um. Wait. Oh, there's the chat. It should be. Yeah. Git clone that. So that's not working.
Yeah, that's not working.
Huh? Okay. Can I also just put you in the breakout room with Nat? I think she'll be able to help you out there. I don't think I've ever seen that error before. All right. Anyone else have any GitHub issues? Okay. All right, so then everyone has the repo. And then, all right, so let's go over how exactly to open the repo. So one thing you could do is, if you know where your folder is in Finder, you can like just navigate to it, and then in here you'll see like .xcode project, and you can just like double click that, and it should launch Xcode with like the project. I'm just gonna wait here for a second. And wait for people to launch Xcode. If you guys have any questions, also let me know. Okay. Has everyone launched the repo? All right, nice. All right, I think that is most people at least. Awesome. All right, so let's get started first. So first I just want to introduce like the IDE Xcode. Has anyone worked with Xcode before? No? Okay, yeah, that's it's like a couple maybe. Yeah, that's like pretty expected. Xcode is like I guess like an IDE used like more specifically for Swift, like you can run like C++ and stuff on it, but like I feel like I wouldn't be wanting to use Xcode unless it was for like Swift. So yeah. But so this is the IDE, and as you can see here, let's just on the side panel you have like your like a directory overview, like all your files. And so this top file over here is like where you configure like the settings for your app, right? Like, do you want it to run on iPhone or iPad? How you want the device to orient it. Sign-in capabilities. So this is for like if you want to launch it to the App Store. There's like a whole process. Like Apple basically vets their apps really, really like strictly. So it's pretty hard. So there's sorry, it's not well, it's kind of hard, but also just takes like forever to like make sure your app is signed correctly for Apple to like release it. And these things are less important, but info is pretty important because this is like where essentially you can like define like allow to give your app like permission to like let's say like open like your camera. Or stuff like that, right? Like I'm sure like you guys have like downloaded apps and like you want to like choose a photo to like upload to like Instagram or something, but it's like, oh, you need to allow this app to like have access to your photos, like you know, that sort of stuff. So that controls that. But we're not really going to be touching this today. And so quick overview of all the files down here on the left side. So first you see like an app delegate.swift. And so I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Swift is like the language that we use to essentially like make iOS apps. So originally Apple had like another language called Objective-C, but like I don't know, most people have been using Swift for like the past 5 years now. So Objective-C is a little like legacy. And right, so everything here is in Swift. Another important difference someone brought up earlier is Swift also has two different frameworks. There's Swift UI, which is like the new framework, and UIKit, which is like the old framework. So I learned how to code, like make iOS apps, you know, using UIKit because I'm old. And so that's what I still use. And also Swift UI was like pretty buggy, among other things, until like this last version of Swift UI. So yeah, that's why we're teaching, or I'm teaching in UIKit, not Swift UI. Another thing to note is I'm pretty sure Apple made Swift UI to like compete with like React Native, because if you look at the syntax there, it's like very similar to React Native. And if you don't know what React Native is, it's basically JavaScript but for app development, and so allows you to create like Android and iOS apps at the same time. And so that's convenient, but it doesn't like allow you to have a lot of the features that like native apps do. And when I say native apps, I mean like apps that are like directly coded in like iOS apps are directly coded in Swift, and like Android apps are directly coded in like Java, Android Studio. So yeah, but those are all just like asides. So all right, so back to here, back to App Delegate. Also, by the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to like just like interrupt, like just unmute yourself and speak, because I probably am not checking the chat as I'm lecturing. So yeah, yeah. So feel free to ask any questions or tell me to slow down, or anything. All right. So in App Delegate, what you really need to know is like the file may look intimidating, but what you really need to know is like we're not going to be touching that really. And what it does is essentially controls like the app lifecycle. So what that means is like what happens when you launch the app, or when the app goes into background mode, or when you close the app, for example. And so a lot of this stuff is like default configured. And so, like I said, I'm not really going to be touching this. But yeah, that's just like a good thing to know. And all right, so the next file we have on the left side is scenedelegate.swift. And so scenedelegate is controls like what you see essentially on your screen, like when you first launch the app. And so we're going to be touching this because we're going to be essentially like wanting to display like a certain screen first, right? A certain view first rather than what they have here. And so yeah, that's like the general overview of what we'll be using scenedelegate for. And as you can see, this uses like Swift UI, as well as UIKit. And content view, okay, so content view is a is essentially like a pure Swift UI file. So as you can see, it looks a little different from like scenedelegate or app delegate, right? Like for example, there's not really like any like functions or anything. It's just like you define something of type view, and then just like literally like paste like a body in there. And all right, so this is like actually like something that the user could see, right, on their screens. And if you notice like here, I have like my screen is split between like code and something that says automatic preview updating paused. So this is actually a very helpful tool that Swift UI comes with, and probably like the only Swift UI I'll be using today in the workshops. Is Swift UI has this thing called a preview provider, which essentially lets you like preview your code without having to run it. And I like that because running code like on like a simulator up here takes like, I don't know, like a minute or two to compile, so it takes forever. And sometimes you just want to see like, you know, if I'm placing like this element on the screen correctly. And so you would just use your canvas instead, which makes it a lot faster. And I don't know if like you guys can see the canvas, but if you can't, how you toggle it, actually up in the top right here, you see like these three icons. So if you click on the middle icon, you essentially see like all these options, and if I like unclick canvas, then canvas is going to be hidden. Otherwise, I click it, canvas is shown. Another one that could be useful is assistant, and so assistant just allows you to show like two files at the same time, for example. Let's switch that back to canvas. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. Cool. And so yeah, so now like once I click like run in canvas, we see a screen with hello world on it. So I'll go more into this later, but I also want to talk about like, you know, how to write Swift code as well. Home view controller, we will mainly be like using this. So view controller is essentially like the screen that the user sees. And so this is like the UIKit version of what we just saw in like content view. So as you can see, it's like more code, but if you're like coming here from like, let's say like a Java or JavaScript background, I think this is probably like easier to read, right? You got your functions, view did load, which is called each time a view is loaded, the view is loaded, and then some functions down here. And once again, this piece of code here is essentially just like what it allows the canvas to show a preview of the app. So yeah, that's home view controller. Okay, so Nathan says he does not have a home view controller. Can you git pull main origin? Because like I said, I updated the code last night. Yeah, I think I might have pushed git pull, or sorry, pushed onto oh wait, okay, sorry. It should be all right. So first, okay, more GitHub, but let's see. So first, can everyone do like git branch -a in their terminal? And then you should see like essentially two branches. So branches in Git are essentially like, I don't know, just like different, like they hold different versions of code. All right, so yeah, so I probably forgot about that. So if you're on main, you want to go to 1/setup/starter. Right, so like I said, they're just branches are different versions of your code. For example, like let's say like you want to add a new feature, it could break all your existing code, right? You don't want to like do it in that repository, so you make like a new branch to like make your changes there. And then once you like verify like your new feature isn't breaking like your original code, then you like merge the branches. But that's like a whole other thing. So right, so if you are on, all right, so what I did here is I just switched from 1/starter to main with this command git checkout. And so now if I run git branch -a, right, you will see that it tells me I'm on main. And so I think a lot of you are probably on main. I should have mentioned this earlier. But in order to get off of main, you just want to run git checkout 1/setup/starter. And then as you notice, it says switch to branch starter, and your branch is up to date with origin setup starter. If your branch is not up to date with origin setup starter, you can run git pull origin and then this. So I'll also just wait here for a sec. So basically, first run git branch -a to see like what you are, what branches you have. If you don't see git branch 1/starter, you want to run git pull origin main, and then you run git checkout the branch that you're trying to get on, and that you should be up to date. And I guess like another thing to make sure you're up to date is just after you go onto the branch starter, you can run just git pull origin once setup starter. And I'll just wait here for a sec. Yeah. I don't know how many of you went, but I think last night at 9 there was like a Git like starter workshop. But also, you know, it's really cool if you didn't go for, you know, there's probably better things you want to do on your Friday night. But yeah, I'll just like wait here, make sure everyone is on the correct branch. And then another way to check that you're on the correct branch is okay, so Lexi says there's not a Git repository. Okay, so did you clone the repository? Right, so yeah. Just make sure you are in the repository by I mean, quick way is like pwd, right? Which is like working directory, like tell me my working directory and make sure you're in blueprint demo app -2022. And in order to get in your blueprint demo app 2022, you write like cd repository. Anyone else having issues? does everyone like essentially then see that they're on one setup starter, which you can also check by going under Xcode here. Okay. All right. Many people just. All right, Joseph. Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So, like, what's the difference between CD and git checkout? Like, if you want to like change branches.
Right. So, CD is like not a git command. It's just like a command you use like navigate between like folders on your terminal. Right. So like, I could like CD like into like, let's say I'm in like documents and I want to CD into like a folder. I'll just say like CD like I don't know, like school. Like if I had a folder called school, and then like under school it'd be like CD into like I don't know, AP World History or something, etc. like that. So it's more of just like a generic like how to navigate your computer sort of thing. And Git checkout is I mean essentially like a way to like from the remote on Git, which is like what you see online, for example, on the GitHub website, like take branch out, like check it out, I don't know, put it like a version of it onto your computer. And so like when you say like git checkout branch, it's just like saying, okay, can I like switch like one branch on my GitHub to like another, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so Chen Kai says when I enter, I get this error message, no such file directory. So I guess like first, try to like find out where you cloned your repository. Like, did you put it under like desktop, documents, downloads, or just like your user, right? Because you want to, yeah. So, because if you're like, so for example, for me, like I put it under like my user. If I were to like put it under like my desktop, right? Like if I were to go to my desktop, right, and I try CD blue CD Blueprint Demo App 2022, like it's gonna tell me there's no such file directory because I don't have the clone repo on my on desktop. So yeah, just make sure like you are in the folder that contains basically the repo. And try to find that. All right, so Shikar, I don't see a one setup starter, only a remote's origin one setup starter. Okay, so then okay, so then basically you need to like get the like pull essentially from like the remote, like to make like a copy of it onto your local repo. So can you try running where do I have it? Like git pull origin main. Nat, connect me if I'm wrong. Like do you just run git pull origin main to like get like all the branches on remote, or
Yeah, but you can also just pull in each branch to make sure.
okay, yeah. So then just try running git pull branch. Basically, sorry. Just try running that and seeing if that basically takes the remote and like puts it locally. Okay. Only shows that the branch is already up to date, but home view controller is showing up. Interesting. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, so I don't, okay. So yeah, it looks like, actually that is correct. Home view controller does not show up. Instead, I think it should be titled just like view controller. Do you guys like all have a file that just says like view controller rather than home view controller, and like without all this code? Like it just looks like, I mean, it just looks like this or something. Does everyone have that? Okay, yeah, sorry. Alright, so I guess my GitHub repo isn't as updated as I wanted it to. Wait, I forgot to push. That's not. Okay, so all right, let me just all right, that's a mistake on my end. So all right, so another Git lesson. So I am currently on one setup starter, and if I push my code, wait, what? Oh. That's weird. Okay, well, that's weird. All right. Let's that's
Wait,
fine.
I see the home view controller in like the blueprint. If you like CD or you go into the folder called Blueprint Demo App inside the original folder.
Like here?
Yeah. It's definitely there. So if you guys aren't seeing it, maybe look inside the other folder. Go like twice.
Okay. Yeah. What Nats did. I also realized I was looking at the wrong branch on the remote Git. So yeah, home view controller should Git pull origin. Okay, so Shikar, can you just run like git pull origin main? Just like git checkout main and then git pull origin main, and then that should hopefully pull the remote branch. So okay. All right. So then home view controller. Like I said, it was it's like class function sort of format. That's what I want to go over now. And then let's see. Another thing is like this thing called the storyboard, and so this was like another way to basically make an app, but it's sort of like a Scratch or something. If you guys have worked in that before, but you would like bring in, I think, like elements. I'm not like too familiar with how to use storyboard, but you would just like essentially drag and drop things on here. And you could like drag buttons, drag, like connectors from this screen to another screen, etc. We're not going to be using that though, because that's like, I guess, like not really coding. So yeah. And okay, so wait, actually, Nat, can I put you in a breakout room with Shikar? Because I think he's still having trouble coding. All right. All right. So, okay. So sorry about that. Assets.xc assets is essentially like where you can like drag and drop like photos, or like whatever other like, I don't know, like elements you want in your app. Like, for example, like the app icon you see on like your home screen. And launch screen storyboard is just like another storyboard for like what you see when it launches. And then you don't have to worry about any of these folders down here. Those are just like tests. Okay, so I'll stop there for a sec. Does anyone have any questions? Or wait, Nat, can you go to, are you able to like enter the breakout room? Or no?
Oh yeah,
All right. Yunso, I'm also gonna move you to the breakout room as well. Okay. All right. Okay, so everyone who can't see the home view controller, like, does it say like one setup starter here? Like in Xcode? Okay, so then, right, so you want to like get on this branch, one setup starter. And right, so I think Natra, like I'll like move you to the breakout room as well because I think Nat will be going over there. Nat will be like I guess like helping you guys like check out the correct branch. So give me one sec. Okay. All right, so everyone else can see home view controller. Okay. All right, so for now we're going to like sort of forget this Xcode project, and instead if you bring up your Finder and go to like where you have like the blueprint repository, I just want to introduce like Swift syntax and how we're going to be doing that. Is essentially using another feature that's not like an app project, but something called a storyboard that allows you to essentially just like play with your code in like a less serious environment. And so I'll show you what I mean by that. All right, so if you go into that repo and you go into like the folder inside the subfolder that also has the same name, Blueprint Demo App, you'll see something like a file down here at the bottom called like Swift syntax.playground. And so if you double click that, you will be like opening a file that looks a little bit like this. Oops. And so there'll be like numbers on the side with like this like highlighted like play button showing the line number. So I'm just gonna wait here until everyone's got that file open. Does everyone have Swift syntax.playground open? Alright, so it looks like someone is having some trouble. So, Jungyuk, so if you go to your folder, like, can you like find where like the repo is in like your Finder?
Yes.
Okay, and then inside the repo, do you see like another folder that has like the same exact name, basically like Blueprint Demo App 2022?
Yes.
Okay, and then when you go into that folder, there should be a file called swiftsyntax.playground.
I can't find it for some reason. They're like ones that end in like .swift, but I don't see anything that says like Swift syntax .playground.
Do you have home view controller?
Sorry.
Do you have home view controller.swift? Like, do you have the file home view controller in here?
I don't think so.
Okay, so then you're probably also on the main branch. Can you try like checking out the branch one setup starter? Because you're only gonna see the playground file on the starter branch.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So how do you make the repo show up in Finder? Well, I mean, you would just like open Finder and go to like where you cloned your repo. Like if I like had cloned it like in my documents, I would just like go to documents and like find it. I put it in like my user folder, so that's how I found it. Another thing you can do is in your terminal, just type in pwd and that'll tell you like where you are right now, making like where the Blueprint app is, and then in Finder you can like just like like sort of like follow this and like try to open. Yeah, Joseph.
Wait, is there any way to open the file from terminal in Xcode? Because I can't find it on my terminal. Even I'm sorry, I can't find it in my Finder, even though I can find it in terminal.
Yeah. Let me see. I've never done it from. Yeah, if you just type in like open like Swift syntax.playground, it should open.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, if everyone can open Playground by now, let's take a look at just like basics of Swift syntax. So, it's like, all right, so I don't know like what everyone's backgrounds is, but syntax, like Swift syntax is a little picky because it has like static typing, and it's like sort of like a mash between I guess like Java and I don't know, just like more of JavaScript maybe. So if you're coming from like a Python background, it can be like annoying, like you having to like specifically define like what are variables, what are constants, what types things are inside of like an array. But if you're like coming from like like a Java or JavaScript background, it should be like pretty easy. So first is like just like declaring variables. And so like I mentioned earlier, like static typing is like is when the user explicitly defines the type of the variable at declaration. So for example, like if I like call this like variable floor, like I am saying that variable floor is a float, and I have to define it as like 1.0 at initialization. Versus like in Python, for example, like you wouldn't need to like say like, oh, this variable is a float, right? You would just say like variable floor equals like 1.0. Swift is not going to be happy if you write that. So yeah. All right, and so infer typing is like when the editor interprets what type the variable is, and so this is like more similar to Python, but you also need to use the let variable here, and I'll explain what that means in a second. So basically, let defines a variable as a constant, so you can just think of it as like const variable equals like x or something. And right, so basically, if you define a variable as a let, you should not be changing. You will not be allowed to change the variable later in the code. Right, and so for example, like if I have like a view controller, right, like I'll call it like home view controller, and I want to assign like home view controller to like another view controller, like I don't know, like main view controller, like that's not going to let me do that. Like you will not be able to build your code if that happens. And so another thing that occurs is when you initially like define a variable as a constant, is you need to like initialize the variable like at declaration, right? Because if you don't initialize it, then you're essentially saying like I'm going to assign a constant a value later, which doesn't really make sense because it's constant, right? So that's why like line 17 will throw you an error, but like line 18 won't, right? Because I'm saying like create like an actual UI label instance for this variable. So right, so 18 and 19 are valuable, are valid syntaxes. All right, and so then I guess like the opposite of let is just the keyword variable, and so that will allow you to like, change the variable later. So I guess like here's an example. So let's say okay, variable 2 is blueprint, right? If I were to say like reassign variable 2 to be like I don't know, like 2022 or something, right? it's gonna throw me an error. Right, cannot assign value to cannot assign to value because it's a constant. Alright, so Divya says, still a bit confused on what line 18 and 19 do, like what do the parentheses and UI labels signify? Right, so good question. So a UI label just by itself tells you that it's like of type UI label. But once you add the parentheses, you're saying create me an object of UI label, right? So basically, what line 18 and 19 are doing is saying like, create an object of the class UI label and like assign that to be the name like variable 7. All right. And when do we not? When do we need to find a variable type? Can you like clarify what you mean by that? Like
when you put the colon in front of the, after the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like more of like a style thing. I think less like originally I think in Swift, like this was not allowed, right? Like a couple versions of Swift ago. But now it is. Sorry, so this, yeah, so now it is. So I think more people just use like line 19 now because it's like less, like less words, obviously. So yeah, I think you'll like not see this very often, basically. Okay. All right. So, any questions on like declaring variables? Okay. So moving on, let's talk about, like data types. And so Swift has like you know, like basically the common data types. You got like tuples, which are like relatable to tuples in Python. You can also think of a tuple as like an array in like Java or C, right? You can't change the values inside a tuple; they're constant. But I guess like a difference between Java and C is like you don't have to like define like explicitly say the length of your tuple, right? For example, like if you were to create a new array in Java, like you would have to say, oh, it's going to be of length like 5. But for a tuple, you don't need to do that. You can just like just put in what you want inside a tuple at initialization though. So there's that. And right, so to access an element in it, you would just use like the, I guess like this is pretty common syntax, just using the brackets and then like the index at which you want the element. And oh, JK, so you can't do that. For a tuple, you need like the dot, sorry. Swift just updated recently, so this is might be a little outdated. Alright, so in order to access elements of tuples, you want like dot, the index you want, not the brackets. So another thing is like arrays, and so arrays are like in Swift are like arrays in Python, and also like array lists in Java. But basically, what that means is that they're dynamic, so you can change the size of the array. You can like add things, you can remove things. It doesn't have to be constant. One thing you do need to note though is Swift requires you to like state like what type of objects are in your array. And so, for example, like if they're all like ints, right? You would like need to like say that. Like if they're all going to be ints one day, right? You would need to say like in line 37 over here, you need to define that. Otherwise, right, if you want like multiple items of like different classes in your array, you also need to like define that using like this like more verbose syntax that we saw sort of similar like in line 18. But like this is like, but with arrays, it's like more strictly enforced. Like you do need to like define like any, I guess like any object, any class could be in this array. And then another thing to note, if you won't see this one often, but line 38, so this is probably similar to like what you would see in Java as well. but yeah, this is another way to define an array. I guess like yet another way is like if you want like an array of like 10 zeros, for example, like let's say in Python it would be like array equals like 0 times 10, or sorry, like this times 10 or something. So line 39 is like the Python, line 40 is the Python equivalent of line 39. So this is just like an easier way, perhaps, of like initializing an array with like repeating numbers. Okay. So Maggie says, why are you allowed tuples without explicit type, but you can't have arrays like that? So I think it's because for tuples, like everything in the tuple is going to be constant to begin with. So you're not going to be, you can't edit anything that is, you can't modify your tuple basically, and like the compiler likes that. But like if you're trying to like add something into like an array, for example, the compiler wants to know exactly what you want to add, right? And so that's why like for an array, like it's essential you need to like put what type you're using. Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. Cool. And so lines like 40 through 53 are essentially just like useful methods, useful array methods in Swift. So you guys can take a look at that yourself. But yeah, so like adding into array, I guess, is important. So it's similar to Python. It's a dot append. You can dot insert, etc., and then iterating through an array, which I'm assuming all of you know how to do if you coded before. But yeah, you can just like go as like a for loop and like iterate through the indices, or like sort of like a for each loop and just iterate through like the values of the array itself. Okay, and so we're like a minute or two over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up the rest of like sets, and then after in the next session we will start with like optionals, and also quickly go over error handling, basic functions, and like structs versus classes, because those are like the most essential ones I think you would need to know. All right, cool. So to talk about sets really quickly, so I don't know how much like theory you guys have learned, but essentially like arrays have orders, right? Like, which is why you can say array at index 0, array at index 1, etc., etc., etc. But in sets, they're not orders. So they're ordered, and so it's just like a collection of elements. So you can't go and access like an element at like a certain index. You can just think of it as like a bag, really, and you can just like grab like a certain element in a bag. And you don't know what you could be getting. So, right, and so sets are useful because it's actually faster to look for like if an element exists in a set rather than in an array, right? Because like if I'm trying to find like an element in an array, I'd have to like iterate through the entire array to find it. But if I'm in a set, it's like I can just like, is this in my bag? If it's not in my bag, I already know. I don't need to iterate. So that's like more of like a computer like theory thingy. So I'm not going to go more into that. But you can essentially think of it as like a Python set or like a hash set in Java. Yeah, and so let's see. So you probably won't be using sets as often. But yeah, so like I said, like in order to like search in a set, it's like constant time rather than like having to iterate through the entire array. So all you have to do is say like my set dot contains like whatever element, and it'll tell you like true or false if it contains that. And honestly, that's probably like the most common thing you would use set for. So right, you can also like find like unions of sets, intersections of sets, etc. And a dictionary, for that matter, is basically a set that maps like one element to another. And so it's sort of like a hash map in Java, or like just like a dictionary in Python. And this would be useful, for example, in like let's say an example test case is like the blueprint organizers want to know how many people are in like each of the workshops, and it could just be like mapping workshop name, right, like iOS to like 60, or it could be mapping like start hacking to like 100. And so you can see how a dictionary is very useful. So yeah, so I'm gonna leave it off there. So we're like 5 minutes over time, but I think that is that's okay. And I will see you guys back at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So it's like 11 a.m. I guess for the kids on the West Coast. But yeah, and if you were in the breakout room earlier and still want to catch up, please stay. Afterwards, I'll be here. Or if you just have any questions about what I talked about, because I think I was rushing through the last part, you can also stay and ask me questions.